Welcome to Command Control Power, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. This is Joe, your host and co-founder. For over 10 years, we've produced weekly episodes featuring epic tales of tech support and troubleshooting, discussions about managing our clients and businesses, and interviews with colleagues and vendors. Our weekly podcast blends thought-provoking discussions on hot tech topics with solutions and anecdotes from the field. Plus, rediscover hidden gems here on the public feed, curated from our expansive archive of over 500 classic episodes. For our pro listeners, we offer Patreon-exclusive shows. This private podcast feed is tailor-made for IT professionals looking for advice and guidance on the more challenging aspects of running your practice, working with your clients and employees, and managing your fleets of devices. For a modest monthly contribution, you'll unlock a world of deeper Apple expertise, meaningful connections, and a shared passion for Apple technology. Simply visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. You can preview the latest episodes and special content there, and you can instantly subscribe to the weekly patron-only episodes right in your favorite podcast app. Level up your consulting journey with the latest episodes, the most candid conversations, bonus features, and more. Join us on Patreon. And now on to the show. Welcome to Command Control Power, big supporter and friend of the show, Benjamin Morales. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
What's up, guys?
Great to have you here.
Good to be
We
here.
look forward to digging in a little bit on the topic of just how you run your business, because I think Sam and I both remarked after meeting you just how good you are at that. And this came up on Slack recently. It's an interesting topic, employees hiring and firing and just managing in general. And I've said recently on the show that one of the things I dislike the most about this work, other people say they dislike the computer user. I don't have that kind of distaste for my clients. I like my clients. I like computers. I dislike managing. That seems to be the most problematic part for me. So I'm interested in hearing your experience. I want to hear about how you got to where you are now. I think that would be instructive. And then also talking about the recent experience that you had with losing a client due to an employee situation.
Sure, yeah. Prior to working for Cirrus, I was an educator in the Pacific Northwest and did some technology stuff for that school. Ended up moving out to Madison, Wisconsin, at a time where it just didn't fit to go back into teaching. The hiring cycle for that was pretty much over. So I got a job at this tiny company called Cirrus Partners. Dennis Nolan was the previous owner who actually made listening to Command Control Power mandatory as part of our job description. We literally
love hearing that.
We had to listen to the podcast.
I was going to say, I'm sorry for you, but
yeah, I love it though. Yeah,
it was good. It was a good introduction because I had never heard of an MSP. Like prior to this, I was trying to figure out what Cirrus actually was. The website didn't really describe anything. And there was this phrase MSP that was thrown around. So I was Googling that, trying to figure out what the heck is an MSP. So started out there as like an entry-level technician, had some background in doing Linux work through college and then into teaching. I got to instruct on computing, and we used Raspberry Pis because it was a cheap private school. And so I'd have a class of 15 kids shell into a single Raspberry Pi and run their scripts on that. And yeah, that moved into like physical computing and hacking. So moving into Cirrus then, it was an interesting transition from Linux world into Mac OS and learning things like root isn't all it's made out to be in Linux world. This MDM thing is more important. And over the course of time, just moved through with responsibilities. The guy that was running the show from a technical standpoint ended up moving on to a different opportunity with one of our customers. And then eventually Dennis was getting to that age where he was thinking about an exit strategy. And I was thinking about leaving as well. And we just had a conversation and it turned into what if we moved you into an ownership position and eventually transitioned Dennis out. Long story short, we did that over a course of a period of time. So I had deferred salary that was compensated for with stock in the business. And then we had a period of time, about 2 years. That was the plan, 2 years where he and I were going to be 50-50 partners. I moved into the role of CEO at that point. And then end of 2023, kind of Q4 2023, I ended up buying Dennis out the rest of the way. And this has been my first year as the sole owner of Cirrus. And so we're a pretty small team. So we've got on staff right now, a full-time developer, 2 full-time support people, and 1 person that comes in 1 day a week. And then me.
Amazing. Now, Ben, can you say more about just the idea of when you were officially CEO? Was there any fanfare? Is there a ritual that you go through?
Confetti.
Or is it just, hey guys, you have to listen to me now. Hey team, I'm the boss. Yeah. Like how, because in all honesty, like how do you get people to really have that mindset shift of looking at you differently and deferring to you and treating you that way as a CEO?
Yeah, I think I had been coaching up for a while and providing the leadership in the organization for a minute. I think Dennis had the foresight to allow me to make some decisions and take some risks, enter into negotiations with customers, and start being seen as a key person in the company. So the transition was pretty smooth. We also had a sales agreement in place. So strategically, I couldn't make a whole lot of changes in the business. Okay. So that helped with that sense of continuity. Dennis, for that 2-year period then where we were both 50-50 in the business, we would meet every once in a while, but he pretty much had stepped back, emailed all of our customers and said, I'm comfortable handing this off to Benjamin. I'm still here for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And people were receptive to it.
Nice. Did your fellow employees, did they know early on of the transition coming, or did they find out later once you were like moving up?
They found out later. I think most of them figured there was something going on. Yeah. Because Dennis and I kept having all of these meetings. But yeah, it was once everything was settled. Yes, we're absolutely doing this. We've signed some paperwork saying we both intend to make this happen.
You were essentially help desk, right? To start?
To start off with, yep.
Yeah. And then just shifting to that position of power, as we'll say.
Small companies. So.
Yeah, still. But was there any that you know of anyway? Any, I don't want to say resentment or anything like that going on that you felt initially, or was it all pretty smooth?
It was pretty smooth. There were a number of things that the team had been asking from Dennis for a while from a leadership perspective, like having written values, things that were more objective in terms of expectations for work. And so I was able to produce a lot of that. And I tried to do it in a way that was collaborative. Like I gave the seed of these are what I think our values need to be, but then gave it an opportunity for the team to weigh in on each of those and make sure everybody was bought in on that kind of vision, mission, and values. And I think that helped. It was a bit of a breath of fresh air. And Dennis, I love Dennis. He's a great guy. I think he's been on the show before and solid dude, really good people person. But I think that he was a commercial photographer and he found himself in this business and found himself like growing after he switched over to like a managed services model from Break Fix. And I think it was a little bit more than he wanted to manage. And so having that kind of hunger to come in and set up some structure and direction, I think was welcomed by everybody on the team.
Interesting.
I don't think anybody else wanted to do that job.
I wonder about that sometimes. My team grew over the years to a peak of maybe 5 at one point in time. And now it's just me and my other full-time consultant. So we're lean and mean at this point. But I've wondered in the past about what is it that I'm offering that keeps someone on my team happy to be there versus thinking to themselves, I could do this guy's job, or why don't I just go do my own thing? Like, why am I here? But I think you just illustrated that by saying really people don't always want that job. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want to have to go through and be the last line of defense, where the buck stops to explain a decision that the company made or to get out of a jam with a client or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of difficult situations you may find yourself in as the owner, as the CEO, that an employee doesn't want to have to deal with. They want to show up, do their job, and go home. And they don't want necessarily that responsibility hanging over them. So
there's something beautiful about being an individual contributor. Sean Maddock is on our team as our developer. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to meet with him in the Mac admins communities. He's pretty involved in the channels that he's in. He's awesome. He's like way smarter than I am. He's got tons of experience, technical and management level. He could probably do a much better job than I do at a lot of areas of business, but he knows what he wants to do. He's done that. And I just love writing code, solving technical problems and doing that. And he's really good at it. To your point, yeah, I think there's some beauty in just being able to focus on the work and not all the other stuff that comes alongside of it. On the other side, I think there are people that just love being in charge, love
Sure.
the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having the idea and being able to implement it, or maybe put it through a few filters, but also to be able to take action. I just remember being frustrated at prior jobs where I worked for people and I thought, we really should do this differently. And in a best case scenario, you either start to implement that change if you're given that kind of freedom to demonstrate that it would be better this other way, or you make the case. And we've all been there where we have ideas that don't go anywhere because we're not in charge. And so, yeah, I think there's a certain kind of person that really cares and wants to do things a better way and wants the ability to do that. And there's other people that don't want the trouble, like just want to do what they enjoyed doing. And like you said, even Dennis, your predecessor who founded the company, did it by accident. He was a commercial photographer originally.
Yeah, photographer for years and years. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us are like a tech for years and years, and then find ourselves in a position where now we're running our own business and maybe we're managing people. And so we never really trained for that. We never decided we wanted to do that. We just fell into it. And it also reminds me of the corporate ladder that often leads to management and then being a vice president of something. People don't always want necessarily to do those other jobs. Like they like to develop code or whatever it is that they do, but the only way to really move up is to take on a management role where you have people reporting to you. And that's not really what people signed up for. And so oftentimes people kind of climb that ladder and then maybe switch gears and move to a different company because they decide that's not really the position they want anymore, or they climb back down the ladder. So it's anything goes, but you have to be honest with yourself and figure out what you really want to do and what you're willing to do and what you are able to learn to do to be able to be successful at that. So how did you know you wanted to run this company?
I didn't at first, right? And there's been a lot of pain points. I remember like Justin Esgard, okay, dude, you're like technical. You're really technical. Running a business is not that. Right? Are you sure you want to do this? And it was really good advice. Honestly, I needed to heed that and really consider it. It was good. It's a fallacy to think that there's this corporate ladder. Unfortunately, it's not a fallacy in a lot of organizations. It's true, but you start out as this individual contributor role. And then when you get good enough, you have to wipe away all of the experiences that you've gleaned and all the skills that made you good at that and try to learn an entirely different skill set of managing people. And it's just not, in my opinion, an intelligent way to approach it. There are going to be people that are really good at the management side of things. I think about Tammy on my team. She's very organized and very good with people, and she runs our desk. She'll be the first to tell you she's not a super technical person, but she can manage technical people, right? Different skill sets. And I think it's incorrect to assume that, oh, you've gotten so good at being technical, now you have to keep track of technical people. And if you want to continue getting more pay, you have to do that. Right. And it really burns a lot of people out if they're not into that. But to answer your specific question, I wasn't trained on any of the technical stuff. I wasn't trained on any of the business stuff. I like books. Some of my key books are back here, and it's just kind of learning. Like the same way I learned the technical stuff. You just start reading books and you start trying things out and try not to reinvent the wheel. Look at good peer-reviewed content and see what is most likely going to be valuable.
It's so true, though, that the difference between your skill, what you learned on the technical end, it doesn't just apply to our field either. There are plenty of people that have become sole proprietorships or have a couple of people with them in electricians and plumbers and things like that. And they don't know the first thing about running a business, nor did I. When I was like, I knew what I did technically, like Ben was saying. And some of them are particularly bad at it. They never got good at it. They can still fix what they need to fix. And I'm not calling out those industries specifically, but it's like one of those things where it's hard to just transition, just be a boss now and manage people and manage finances and all that other business. So I agree with you 100%. The other piece of it is also you're giving up that technical piece in a way, not completely, but you're releasing some of that control to other technicians and expecting them to be at that level. It's hard for me sometimes to see it and just be like, I want to do this better or different because I still want to get in there and do that. So that I find it's tough to pull the two apart and just be the person running the business.
Yeah, every time we hop in, and I'm guilty of this, but every time we hop in and get our hands in the work, rather than delegating out to people, we're harming our business. We're harming our employees by not giving them the opportunity to go through the hard stuff that made us good at what we do or what we did when we were the individual contributors. And there are certainly times I go into my desk And I look at ticket histories and I just say, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
this should have been a 30-second problem. How do you not know that blah, blah, blah? And it's a 30-second problem for you because you spent 14 hours trying to figure it out on your own in college.
Yeah.
Oh, so true. I was just thinking about it today. I saw a ticket fly through, and this is why I got to get my eyes off tickets. I don't know how you feel about that, Ben, but I really want to get away from that. And I saw something, and I jumped in, I put an internal note. Why wouldn't you do this? And he's like, dude, I got it. He's like, all right. I was like, I know what I'm doing. And I was like, I shouldn't have jumped in. Yeah, I realized right away I didn't need to because I know he knows what he's going to do. Do you feel like maybe you want to be out of sight, out of mind with tickets at times, or do you want to be involved?
I want to be out of it. I want to have good key performance indicators that I can look at and look at trends among my team and try to determine how we're doing at a high level. The goal for me is to have those KPIs so well defined for our team that it encourages them to game it. And when they game it, it actually results in better customer service and better technical results. We're a long ways from that. We've been working on a lot of policies and standards and procedure work for the past couple of years here, trying to get ourselves from it being stored in your head and having this tacit knowledge that you just go in and fix it to, this is a well-defined, repeatable thing that we do. So yeah, it's tough. I would love to be out of it. I think it'd be best for my team if I were out of it. There are still times where I have to hop in and take care of it, but eventually we'll get to that point where we can make that next key hire, which is going to be that engineer that's smarter than I am at doing support. So we've got awesome on our team. I mentioned Tammy and another guy named Adam. They're great people. And they've been doing this for a long time. They've got a lot of experience, especially on the Windows side of things. They're both relatively new to Mac OS. And they actually worked together for 16 plus years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's actually a fun story. But anyways, they're learning the Mac OS side of things. But they need somebody that's going to be able to go in and supply more of the deep Unix internals and networking and stuff like that. That is stuff that Sean and I mostly do. And Tammy's really good at trying to shield me from stuff. She goes to Sean where I would normally just hop in and she says, no, we're going to pull some time away from Sean before we get Benjamin involved, which is tough for me, but good for the business.
I have one thing that's actually for Jerry. So I'll put him on the spot for a moment. But Jerry, I know obviously we know you're an army of one, but do you feel compelled or a need to do things like documenting well or keeping things in a central place just in case or anything like that if you need to bring in someone when you're on vacation or for whatever reason? Or do you have that need to do that, or are you feeling safe, like I got my own methods thing?
That's interesting you bring that up. No, I'm using Hoodoo for my documentation. So I guess in a pinch, I could pass that torch to somebody else. And so it's not all in my head. And I use Daylight to organize my business
Daylight
that way.
Yep.
Yeah. That's right. So in that regard, no, I don't think it's fair to my clients to keep it all in my head and not to have some sort of an escape hatch. So if I get hit by a bus, somebody can't pick up the torch. But no, I don't feel compelled to write procedures and policies down because it would just be myself reading those.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, measuring yourself using key performance indicators and calling
How did I do?
To review. Yeah.
He already speaks in the third person, so it works.
That's right.
Gary, you did great today.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It's a different world. I remember it was much simpler when it was just me. And then also I realized that, wow, actually aiming to grow my team to be a team of more than one is good for me in a lot of ways. In the ways Jerry's describing, documenting things, it all should be documented for our clients' sake and also for the efficiency of the interaction down the road. There's a lot of good reasons to just run your company that way anyway. I don't think it's not a huge mindset shift and it's not a huge amount of effort. It's really just a day-to-day process to do that, because I would encourage other listeners out there who are an army of one to start acting like you have a team to answer to. Start acting like you might want to collaborate with even just a colleague or another individual on your team who could pick up where you leave off. It's just a good mindset to be in, and it certainly helps you grow when the time comes where you may need to. What size is your team now, Ben, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think we're 4.5 or four and a fifth.
Gotcha.
We're coming in really a half day a week. She just like baselines devices.
Okay. Nice. And so, yeah, it's just speaking of the experience you brought up on Slack, you've been through some difficult experiences with employees and clients and just the kind of the intersection of those two. And do you want to just bring listeners up to speed in terms of what kind of inspired this conversation?
Yeah. So I had an employee, I had interviewed her and then didn't offer her a job or didn't extend an offer to her immediately. And then about a year later, I was hiring again. And I was like, oh, I remember that person had good people skills. She seemed solid. And so instead of paying a recruiter or doing all those things that are super expensive, I just went back and said, we have another opening. Do you want to do this? We at that time had a strict, you've got to pass your ACSP certification, A+ certification within 90 days of employment with us, mostly just for peace of mind for me, knowing that you at least know how to put in hard work and pass an exam and have the absolute minimal stuff. So she ended up not passing that exam in time. And there was clearly a certain amount of like test anxiety for her and stuff like that. And I felt bad. And instead of being hardline like I had been about it in the past, where people would really push themselves hard into passing it sometimes in the last minute, but they passed it. I was like, oh, we'll let it go. And I think I immediately established there are no standards here at Cirrus. There are no consequences. And she had a lot of great characteristics and skills, but she was very young and a little bit immature. Didn't have that ability to say, I'm not going to present my full personality to a customer. Not that you need to be inauthentic, but you need to learn how to tone down and turn off certain parts of
big time
your attitude when you're dealing with people, right? And for her with customers, she'd walk in and it'd be like she's talking to her best friend. And it's like, it's a little cringy. It's a little awkward.
Can you give a little color to that? Like any examples that come to mind? I'm just so curious now. My gears are turning.
It's like the stereotypical Zoomer stuff, like, hey, stuff like that, oversharing about what's going on. And being young, you get in a conversation and you're used to everybody, oh, I'm young, so everybody wants to learn about me. And so you just talk about yourself too much and you don't learn to say, hey, how's it going? What's up with you? There were those kind of soft skills that were problematic, but more importantly, like she started not following our expectations for response times and procedures. And we'd start saying, okay, this is our standard. You need to do this every time. So we had one customer that was about $100,000 a year customer that frankly wasn't a great fit for us to begin with. They were pretty much all PC, and we'll deal with PC, but I don't love it. It doesn't bring me joy. And they ended up getting frustrated about our response times. And often it would be like she was supposed to be watching the desk and taking care of these tickets, and she wasn't responding in time. So we got on her case, but eventually it was too late. And so we ended up losing that contract. I think a part of it as well for them was cost. I think it's always multi-layered, right? So we're not cheap. And so there's a cost leader in the area that came in afterwards. We didn't know about it initially. A few weeks later, they're like, oh, instead of just bringing it back in-house, we also are now working with this low-cost solution. So it was one of those areas where I could see her not hitting the mark and had to let her go. And that was about a year ago. Then we have this other customer that is one of our smaller customers. They've been using Helix since the 80s or whatever. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
And they had this horrible situation where they're on 32-bit for years. And so we had this 2018 Mac Mini that was running VMware. And so we basically had to have old clients. So they would VNC into the client VM, and then they'd have this server VM serving up the files. And this thing like ran that business entirely. People didn't know what they were doing. They were completely dependent on this, but they couldn't get into the dev side of things. And they hadn't invested in keeping this up to date. So you've got this like aging platform, no access to it, super dangerous. And I did tell the owner, you need to get off of this. So the Lifeline, life support side of it, we engineered that portion of it, but the original stuff was somebody else we'd never met.
Okay.
So anyway, this past employee had helped when we finally put out this new solution for them of having that virtualized environment, because they were on these ancient Macs. We had her go out and baseline and work with the employees. And she really rubbed them all the wrong way. It was like not good. because she had that kind of Zoomer, we're all best friends here, and they were all 50 plus, not about it. A little bit further out of the city, a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I found in my early days as a early 20s guy starting out, I had to, proactively overcome the impression that I'm this young guy who doesn't really have a lot of experience in the world, let alone in doing this specific job. And so you have to fake it till you make it a little bit, and you have to really overcompensate for that bias that you're expecting them to have, where they look at you and they see this young person, and yeah, you may be a whiz at computers, but can you really understand them? Can you really have a rapport with them? You have to work at that. And I think, some people realize that, and some people just say, hey, I'm just the same in any context, and that's what works for me. And clearly it didn't work for this group of people in your on your client roster. Yeah.
And when I let her go, I called them up and said, I just want you to know, because at that time I was getting some gripes from them about a year ago as well, saying, this is not good. We don't want to deal with her anymore. Like, we'll deal with anybody else on your team, but we don't want to deal with her. And so I said, this is a pattern I'm seeing. I am separating the employee. So then again, I think it's that combination. We were going into the year and we were saying, okay, are we ready? 2024. They were the kind of group that wanted to pay all of it up front, and they had a very stable workforce, and they're a pretty small team. And so we don't know if we want to keep going. So we continued to provide support for them out of contract. Never got an invoice paid though from them for the 2024 stuff. And so finally, about a month and a half ago, I went back to them and was like, look, guys, I'm going to send you another invoice. I'm going to charge you for the time that we've been working together here over 2024. I need you to make a decision. Do you want to move forward with this or not? If not, we're going to stop because we need you in. We can't have this kind of floating ether service agreement.
Oh, that's you extended them a pretty long runway, 7-8 months to say, let's hope. I've been there. It's like the months go by and you're getting a little bit of a signal. Yeah, they're going to pay. And what am I going to do? Tell them that they're dead in the water until they pay? It seems harsh. They're sitting here stuck. I'm not going to not help this one employee with this one issue. And it just, goes on. And then you're like, oh man, they owe me a lot of money and they haven't paid me a cent in 7-8 months. Yeah. So you basically gave them that ultimatum to say now or never.
Yeah. And I talked to the operations guys. I need to speak with the owner. I'll let you know by the end of September here. So that came around and I've been tasked to replace you. It's fine. Yeah. Like, honestly, that server, that whole situation, and banking on Helix or big donut people or whatever they're calling themselves these days, it's just a recipe for a business failing because of not investing properly in this platform that does a job of 5 or 6 people for them. And so I wasn't disappointed at all to see them go. It's great. Let's make a smooth transition. They're probably going to go with the other Mac shop in Madison that does like repairs. It's fine. Great. So I'm not sad to see them go, but then I asked, what's going on? Is it service? Is it price? Is it personality? And it's partially price, but mostly it's personality, to be honest. We had this other lady, that past employee, and really rubbed the owner the wrong way. Tammy's been great. We love Tammy. I'm in operations, guys. I don't like this decision, but it is what it is. I'm just like, fine. So they'll pay us out and we'll transfer all the knowledge of that very delicate system over to the other group. And let it be their time bomb. The big takeaway for me is I don't mind losing that business. It was bad business for me, but the poor, low performing employee a year after being separated from the company has still tarnished our reputation, so that when the owner is thinking of Cirrus, they're thinking of that experience rather than all that we've done, in my opinion, graciously out of contract without payment over the course of this year. That still outweighs, that bad experience outweighs all of the stuff that we've been trying to deliver over the course of the year. It was pretty frustrating. And I think the debate on the ACES channel then became about how do we handle this, right?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear what you all do with your team. I mentioned the not liking that hire fast, fire faster mindset that I feel like I've heard talked about a lot in the MSP community.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And there were some people that made some really good points.
Do you think their excuse that it was the previous employee that you already had let go and you've been working with them ever since, like the cheater's way out, that they could just easily say, this is why, but the underlying issue may be price? or they don't value sometimes what we charge. So yeah, it's much easier to say, oh, it's the employee that doesn't even work for you anymore. That's the reason. Yeah. Something about that doesn't pass the smell test with me.
It's entirely possible. I can't read their minds though. So all I've got to do is work off their actions. And if they're calling that out still, it's at least something on their mind. There's some semblance of truth. And I think that the employee was a poor performer that I kept around for too long. So I don't think it's an invalid frustration.
What was the time period? Was it during that sensitive time where we were still at the very end of the pandemic and we were operating a little bit more judiciously with handling people and clients and employees and things like that? Or was it already past pandemic?
I think it was already past that. It was literally like a year ago. But this group, they didn't care. There are some groups out here in Wisconsin that just ignored like masking up and expectations for that kind of thing.
But philosophically, it was a real sensitive time for a lot of people. And we don't have that kumbaya moment amongst anywhere in this country like we did during the pandemic. And it was nice there for a while. It was a horrible thing, but there were nice things. There were nice things that came out of it. People treating people a little bit better.
For a little while.
For a little while.
Yeah, for a few weeks at the beginning. We're all in this together. And then like pretty soon thereafter, it was like, are you pro or anti this or that? Or like, we're in this together. We're not with you though. Yeah.
Everything gets politicized very quickly in this country.
So polar. It just amazes me how polarizing everything is. There's always pro and anti about everything. Are you pro sidewalk or anti sidewalk? Do I have to choose? I don't know. It depends on the street. I don't know. Like,
that's a real thing in Wisconsin because you got to shovel that sidewalk.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. See, I don't want to stir up any. This is already a lot of controversy for one show. Yeah. No, it's such an interesting just issue thinking through, like you mentioned about hire fast, fire fast. I guess that can work for some people, but you really have to hire fast and fire fast. You can't just do half of that equation. And I think fundamentally the hiring process is either selection process or a filtering process. You can either front load the selection process to identify a person that's very likely to be a very good fit. And you can spend a lot of time up front paying recruiters, like you mentioned, maybe having them have a trial period where they're passing certification exams and working with clients and like going through a kind of process of like training. But even before you get to that point, selecting the person very carefully versus the filter process, which is let them in and then filter the ones out that don't work. And you can identify the people through actual experience in the field if they're going to work out. But I don't know that anything is foolproof. I've seen clients on both sides of that. And the hire fast, fire fast obviously results in a lot of turnover, which then we have to sort out. You're onboarding people, you're offboarding people constantly. That's costing them money.
I only see that in my opinion, working in a larger organization. Like I couldn't handle onboarding, offboardings that fast in a company of my size. I would go nuts.
Same. There's no way. Yeah. It's too costly.
And also where I feel like that would be more in an anonymous IT support situation where it's like you might get one person or the other if you call in, and it doesn't really matter if I get Julia or George, then it's fine. But if it's like just Sam or Matt, then it's going to freaking matter if I'm just like churning people in and out.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, I think my frustration when I hear people talk about it is that it really is the excuse for a lack of due diligence. And you start hearing things like, oh, you've got to hire for personality. You can train on the technical, but you can't train somebody to have a good personality. And it's okay. That's part of it. Certainly you don't want to hire somebody.
I think I've said that actually, but go on.
Me too.
I think we've all felt that way at some point. At the same time, though, there are technical requirements. There are skills that are needed, and you need to be able to demonstrably say, this person can do this. Either they've got a background in technical stuff where they've learned how to do technical stuff, they've got a math degree or something like that, and we have a high level of confidence that they can do this entry-level job that doesn't really require experience, or they've proven themselves and we've gone and talked to their references. I've lost out on good candidates that somebody else hired faster. I also then sometimes see those same candidates on the job market again a few months later. So I certainly don't want to say hire slow. We've done that. But you have to have objective things that you're measuring against that go beyond your own in-group biases of these people feel like they're from my culture and I can get along with them. It has to be better than that. We have to be better than that. And then the firing stuff, it's so often like just an owner, especially in small businesses, get pissed and deal with, I don't want to see this person's face anymore. And so they're going to fire them. And we have these at-will employment states where they don't need a reason unless they're in a protected class. And I think that's just really horrible to do to people. And I feel like it's easy to get desensitized to that when you are a founder who's been doing this for 15, 20 years, and you forget what it's like to have a boss and to be the new person, and to, especially in small businesses where things are not well defined, you go in and you're like, I don't know what's expected of me. And you do it the wrong way. And you're like, how was I supposed to know? You're probably going to be too scared to say that. I had some run-ins with Dennis early on, made my insides flip upside down, where I got hammered pretty hard about doing things wrong. And to Dennis's credit, I sat down in his office one day. I was like, look, you cannot talk to me or other people like this and expect them to stick around. If you want good employees, you have to treat them with respect. And to Dennis's credit, I never heard him speak to another employee like that ever again after that conversation.
Wow. That took a bit of guts.
Yeah.
If it's that or go find another job, like I could find another job.
Right. But as business owners, there's always been that other side of the coin. I could think of an instance with Joe, and Joe could bring it up or not, where it was a really serious situation. And I'm not saying that Joe blew up like that, but you have those moments as a business owner where you have somebody that you've tasked to do a job, and for whatever reason, it goes terribly wrong. And it's really hard. You have to be a real special person to keep your cool.
Jerry, are you saying an incident where Joe was really mean to you when you were?
That's what I was wondering too. I'm like,
I want this story.
I out of line?
Right now.
Yeah. Jerry knows what he did. No, but the idea of blowing up at someone, right? It's like, that could serve to telegraph the severity, the seriousness of the situation. Maybe if you might need them to understand this can never happen again, and I'm going to give you another chance. I don't like the idea particularly of blowing up at someone and saying, get out of here, I never want to see your face again, because I should probably just handle that more carefully and just, if I'm going to let them go, I don't need to also yell at them and scream in their face about it. That's probably not the right answer anyway. It's not really my style. But if I'm keeping someone on, I might need to let them know how serious the problem was that they created. But there's ways of doing that and navigating that to not be disrespectful. Like that, to your point, Benjamin, it's like, there's just no need. And good employees are not going to tolerate that, like you said. So that ends up being a sticking point where people will separate over personality and just the way they're running things. So you have to have mutual respect. If I want my employees to respect me and to respect my clients and all that, I need to demonstrate that to them as well. But sometimes it's about finding the right people in the first place. So how have you found people along the way? Like, how many have you hired since your tenure there or prior? And what are some of the sources? And I'm going to take notes on this one.
Yeah, so I think that we talk all the time about, small businesses, you're not a technology expert. You shouldn't be doing this yourself. You need to hire somebody like me to come in and guide you. You don't want to learn how to run an IT program. Similarly for us, I think one of the massive things that has helped us in terms of having structure and having kind of accountability outside of our organization is getting a good PEO. So we had a group here in Madison called QTI. We signed up with them and their PEO. And then, of course, they got bought out by Tandem HR, and then they're getting bought out again now. But so far, through all of that, they've been really solid at providing us resources. They do our payroll, they do our benefits, but they also have consultants that, as part of their flat rate fee, we don't get charged anything extra. I can email and say, I had this really bad run-in with this employee. I'm pissed. What should I do? And then they talk me down and say, okay, did you give them specific instructions that they could follow? Did you do your part in providing guidance for them on how the work should be executed? And a lot of times the answer to that is, no, I didn't. I just assumed that they would be able to read my mind and glean my years of experience doing this and execute it the same way. So that's been really helpful. They've given us also the structure for our notice of disciplinary action and the paperwork that we fill out when we have problems, and the professional improvement plans that we do with our team when there is an issue.
That's someone you can consult with. Let's say this situation happens where you hear the feedback from your client and they're saying this person is presenting in an unprofessional manner and is really a mismatch in terms of personality, et cetera. Can you talk to your, as we all just looked up the acronym PEO, Professional Employer Organization, because I didn't know that before this conversation. Can you talk to your PEO and will they guide you in how to respond to that situation?
Yeah. This group in particular is flipping awesome. I recommend checking them out. I know they do multi-state. They provide so much value for us. Sean on our team has worked in various states and they handle the payroll tax stuff around that. And then they'll help you build out your handbook and be aware of the legal constraints within each state that your employees might be in. And they can build custom stuff for each of those groups. And their fee is just a little bit in each payroll. They just take out a couple extra $100. And for me, that's totally worth it because then it's an all you can eat in terms of getting guidance, getting help around all of the HR benefit payroll stuff. They will write, like when I had to separate my best friend. So we met working as employees at Cirrus together. And at first I really didn't like him. And then I went through a divorce and he became my best friend during that time. But I had to separate him because his performance wasn't what we were looking for, what we needed. And he was going in a different direction anyway. He had finished his MBA and he had all these skills that he wasn't able to materialize here. And so I knew I was not going to be objective in anything. And frankly, probably kept him around longer than I should have just because I didn't want to deal with it. I got to work with my rep over there, Megan, and she guided me through the whole thing, telling me this is how you need to act. Here's a letter that you can change the name on and use this. That's
got to be hard.
Specialized.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful. On the hiring side of things, I've done like the LinkedIn posts and I've done the ZipRecruiter stuff and all those kind of, they make big promises and they usually don't deliver. The best candidates I've received, honestly, have been from Robert Half. They're a pretty big national group. They do take a sizable chunk when you're working with them. You can do it a couple different ways. They can deliver you a candidate, you hire them right away, and you can pay the fee over a period of time, or you can basically treat them as a contractor and they take a chunk out over the course of months, and that decreases until you choose to make an offer. And they've been awesome because we're oddballs for them. They're used to like Windows groups. And so we're like, oh, we're Linux and we're Mac OS heavy. And so I think that was like a fun challenge for them. And so anytime they get somebody that fits that, they shoot the candidate my way. And I usually end up having an interview with them. And some of the best quality people that I've seen come through have been from them. And it's like it's a relationship you build with them. So our point of contact here in Madison, she drops by our office every once in a while. She brings flowers and cookies and stuff. But it's an ongoing dialogue. What are you looking for? What are the things that you expect out of a candidate? We've had some crappy interviews and we give feedback and we never see that kind of problem come up with another candidate. So they earn that chunk that they take out, in my opinion, because they bring me quality candidates that I never would have gotten just using ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn or whatever.
Just jumping back to dealing with an employee that you need to let go. I know that in Connecticut, the laws that apply to a small business owner as opposed to a larger business, I used to know what the threshold was, but I don't remember anymore. But are there different laws that would apply to you as a small business owner as opposed to a larger organization? And even though they're telling you best practice, you really don't have to abide by any of that. At least in Connecticut, your grounds for dismissal for if you're a small business owner can be pretty fast and loose. Are there different
no reason, right? If it's an at-will contract, it's like any reason or no reason, essentially.
Yeah, you could do it, Donald Trump. There, you're fired.
That is how it is in Wisconsin, but I have a reputation I want to maintain, and so
of course
we're competing in Madison, right? Epic, we've got Google, we've got Zendesk, we've got Fetch. We've got all these big groups that have like Silicon Valley style money.
Yeah.
And so if we have a hope in hell of being able to hire talent, we've got to basically be able to provide the same pay and benefits that those groups are having. And same thing with termination, right? it would kill me if it became, oh, Cirrus is the guy that hires and fires there is a complete jerk. And
right. You've got a lot of exposure to bigger players. And yes, I would feel the same way as you did and acted the same way. That explains a lot.
Yeah. I tell you, this is one of those situations where, all right, Ben's got a similar sized company to me. Then he's doing all these things. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
I try to share this at ACES, right? ACES is a great place to go and learn from other people. It's really easy to sit in front of people for 52 minutes here and talk about the good things. There's all sorts of crap at Cirrus that is not great and not good and probably drives my team crazy. I'm just lucky that right now, the team that I've got are really committed, quality people that are way better to me than they should be. And we're making progress, but we have massive growing pains. Our biggest problem is an inability for me to predict our resource availability. And so we moved off Monday.com. That was a whole thing. I'll never work with Monday.com again.
Oh, I need to do that sometime.
So moved off of that. And we're moving into Open Project right now because its reporting is just better. And the kind of structure that we're trying to build out project management stuff it was just like Monday.com was very flexible. It's really just a glorified spreadsheet. Whereas this is really more focused on traditional approaches to project management. But it's a mess, right? We're spending this month before our Monday.com subscription ends at the very beginning of November. We're spending this month trying to figure out, we've sucked so bad at these things for so long. Like, how do we fix them using Open Project? Get a lot of bad stuff too.
Yeah, it adds to the workload too. You guys have a job to do in terms of supporting clients, answering tickets, doing that. And then with the transition internally like that sucks away time potentially that you have to use to focus on that piece. I remember we did something similar when we moved from Basecamp to Hoodoo, and it was just a time suck to get all that information out and not just dump it in, but to get into the right places, make it searchable, all that stuff. So yeah, I feel that pain.
I never would have thought of moving from Basecamp to Hoodoo as a one-for-one transition.
Yeah. It seems it's not like for like exactly. There's overlap, but
Hoodoo's awesome.
Yeah. And I was turned on to that by Jerry, actually.
Nice.
So but just in terms of how open and honest you are, I do appreciate it. It's what we're talking about here is, of course, you're saying it's not just all good times. There's a lot to consider. Obviously, you showed us some of that on the internal side of what happens when you have a bad employee. And I've gone through those experiences as well. And it's not fun, not easy. And it really hurts such a small team in a dramatic way. And that's 25% of my team right there. I appreciate you being so open and honest about it. And I think I will want to probably pick your brain after this podcast at some point too.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And I would say, like, those good times, bad times, it's all part of a narrative, right? That's unfolding before you. I think about that employee that didn't perform well and it cost us a lot of money. She also brought in her manager from her previous gig, recommended. That's Tammy. Tammy's awesome, right? And then Tammy brought in Adam, who she worked with for years, and Adam is awesome. And so it's okay. Yeah, there was this bad experience, but also the amount of value that those two individuals have brought to the business, phenomenal.
Good job, man. I know it's required listening for the crew, so good job talking highly of them.
That's right.
I don't make them listen now, but
why would you?
I can't complain about stuff on here if they're listening.
If everyone's listening, exactly.
You mentioned Sean Maddock a little bit earlier in the show, and he is just so generous on Slack and such a great guy and always is there to help people. And I just can't say enough good things about him. And so that demonstrates the type of people that work for you. And that's highly impressive. And the fact that you've been so candid with us tonight is also wonderful too. We look to speak with people like you who are indeed leaders in the small business community doing what we do. And I think we all learn something every time we talk to somebody like yourself.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I feel very lucky that Sean joined our team and has stuck around as long as he has.
Yeah.
He's a friend at this point as well, which is that kind of dangerous situation again.
Yeah.
But he delivers and he's very self-driven and wicked smart guy and very generous, kind-hearted person as well. So yeah, if anybody's listening here and you haven't had an opportunity to meet Sean Maddock on Mac Admin Slack, you should. He's great.
Right on. Thanks so much, Benjamin, for sharing that. Like Sam was saying, just some of the difficult things you've gone through in addition to a lot of the successes, because there's always a balance there. And I look at also the cost of losing some of these big clients you've lost along the way there that you've shared with us as the learning cost of learning some of these lessons, right? This is a hard lesson to learn sometimes, but you wrote up and you shared here what some of those lessons were specifically that you learned from going through this. And there's always a cost associated with the things we learn. There's a learning cost. And so we just have to factor that in and try and learn those lessons rather than just having to keep relearning the same lessons, because there's plenty of new things to learn too. So I think it helps for you to share that with all of us, certainly, and with our listeners as well, to know that also we're not alone. We all go through some of these same difficulties, and maybe we can learn some lessons through each other as well. So we can all share that learning cost burden a little bit more evenly. So thanks a lot for sharing that. And as we wrap up here, I'm wondering if you, Benjamin, and also Jerry, want to take a book off your shelf behind you and share that with our listeners. Jerry, that might be a little bit more difficult, I have a feeling, but I know, Ben, your shelf is real. If there's one book you can share with our listeners, it could be tech or non-tech, what would it be? Now,
So The Goal
okay,
is awesome. The flip side of that, so this is focused on manufacturing, and it's will make you love Toyota, but it's super good. The kind of technology adaptation, it's really the same book, but focused on technology side, is the Phoenix Project. Really
that's
solid.
one I think you shared the Phoenix Project at ACES, right? Was that one of the references?
Probably. It's been pretty influential, and they've had,
Nice.
It's a group of people that wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
And then anything Michael Porter, they've got this big volume that's competitive advantage, but they also have the Harvard Business Review stuff. So these like little books that his stuff is in, super solid, smart people.
Amazing. Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you for the recommendations. And Jerry, I think he's back from his teleporting into his background. So what did you bring us, Jerry, on your side?
All right, Joe. I was going to show one of my jazz books, but I don't want to diminish some of the important books that Benjamin's shared with us. So I'm just going to pass here.
Fair enough.
Well, guys, thank you so much for running this podcast. I've had the opportunity to listen and learn from you guys for a lot of years, and it's been really fun in the recent years to actually get to meet you in real life.
Yeah.
So seriously, it takes commitment. I'm sure there are some dark seasons where you think to yourself, why the heck do I do this? Growing from it. So thank you for doing this.
Thanks for saying that. Thanks for contributing and all your support as well on keeping the show going. We really appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks so much. Awesome. Great talking to you, Benjamin Morales from Cirrus Partners. Thanks again for joining us. Talk to you soon.
Of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a cent.